This chapter, this lecture is on monopoly, Mankiew's chapter 15, monopoly. Okay. Um, in this chapter, we're going to learn the following. Let's just list out the learning objective. We're going to learn why some markets only have one seller. Okay, we're going to figure out what kind of conditions are necessary to set up a market with only one seller. We're also going to learn how a monopolist determines the quantity to produce and the price to charge. Unlike perfectly competitive markets where prices are given to firms, here the monopoly can set prices. We're going to learn how the monopolist decision affects economic well-being. Specifically, we're going to talk about consumer surplus, producer surplus, etc. Okay, and see if in having a monopoly reduces total surplus compared to a competitive setting, which is our benchmark. We're going to learn why monopolists try to charge different prices to different customers. Okay, this is non-linear pricing or price discrimination. We are not going to do the last one. Various public policies aim at solving the problem of monopoly. That's economics and law. I'd rather not cover that kind of stuff for introductory course. So we're going to stick to the first 4 bullet points. Okay. So what is a monopoly? A monopoly is a firm that is the sole seller of a product without close substitutes. Okay. Therefore, the sole supplier or monopolist is a price maker, not a price taker. So unlike in a perfectly competitive situation, there's a bunch of different close or identical substitutes. We talked about situations where you have a bunch of companies selling generic white t-shirts. Here, you have a company that sells something unique. Well, that's fine if you have something unique. If you have a lot of competitors that also sell something unique, but that are close enough, then we have a different outcome. And we're going to learn about that in a monopolistic competition. But here, while the monopolist sells a unique product, there is no close substitutes. If you want, say, the cure for cancer, you have to go to that one company that creates that pill. And in that type of situation, that company will charge whatever they want. All right. So let's talk about why some markets only have one seller. And clear this, move on. Okay. Reasons why markets have only one seller. Okay. Monopolists maintain its power because of the barrier to entry. There's something preventing other companies from entering. For example, you have a company like Apple. They're the only ones that can sell iPhones. You and I can hire very smart engineers to take apart an iPhone, and we could figure out exactly what is needed to create a knockoff iPhone. However, if we did this, we'd get in trouble. We get sued. Okay. Something is preventing us from doing this. Let's look at some barriers to entry that prevents competitors from selling identical or substantially similar products. The first one is called monopoly resource. A key resource required for production is owned by a single firm. Okay, an example of this is not exactly a monopoly, but an example of this is De Beer. They own 80% of the diamond mines in the world. They're effectively a monopolist in diamonds. Okay, they control prices of diamonds. Cable companies, if you want cable internet through the cable lines or TV through the cable lines, you got to go to that cable company because that one cable company in your local area owns all the cable lines. Okay. So, one reason why monopolist has some sort of barrier to entry is that one company owns a specific resource. Okay, cable company, they own all the cable lines. You want to compete with them, you're going to have to dig holes and create your own cable lines everywhere in the same city. Okay. All right. Another reason why monopolists have some sort of barrier for others from entering into their market is government regulation. The government gives a single firm the exclusive right to produce some good or service. Okay, example of this is patent laws and copyright laws. U.S. patents last for 20 years, except for design patents, which has a term of 14 years. Okay, so the US government basically says, oh, you created something new. We're going to give you 14 or 20 years protection. The US government does this because they want people to innovate. It's hard to create something new, it's easy to copy. So if you spent tons of money creating something new, and I just wait around and copy what you did, I'm basically becoming a leech, and I'm basically quote unquote stealing money, meaning you spent, creating something new is like winning the lottery. You might create some cool product that you think is cool, but if the market doesn't like it, it's a failure. So if you hit on something, and I could just go in and you spend billions of dollars developing this thing, and it only takes me a couple 100,000 or a couple of million to copy what you did, I could undercut you and set prices lower than your prices because you're trying to recoup your development costs. I don't need to. I didn't spend billions. I spent millions or hundreds of thousands. I could put you out of business. Well, if everybody knows this, no one wants to develop. US government likes growth, likes our economy to grow and innovate, helps society by us becoming leaders of innovation in advancing our technology. And to give incentives for that, we give patent protection. And for 20 years, you develop something new, you could charge almost whatever price that you want. Okay. Another example of this is Alcoa, Aluminum Company of America. The first guy who created aluminum back in like 1903 or something like that, he developed aluminum. He created his own company. And if you wanted aluminum for 30 years or for 20 years or whatever, you would have to go to him in Alcoa. Okay. All right. Another reason, and the last reason I will give why a market will only have a single supplier is the following. The production process naturally leads to one firm dominating over smaller firms. And that's because we're at the increasing returns scale portion of the average total cost curve. And as you become bigger, your per unit cost falls so that one firm dominates over small firms. Okay, let's go talk about this one. So here's average total cost. We're in the increasing returns portion like this. And this is like quantity of pizza. And right now, let's say mom and pop stores, okay, small ones, they make about 50 pizzas per day. And it costs them an average total cost here, let's say $5. So it costs them about $5 to make the pizza. They sell it for about $5. They're breaking even. Well, Domino's, they're a bigger company. They could come in large. They can make like 80 pizzas per day. And their average total cost is less. Not 5, it's like 3. Okay, less than 5. So Domino's is a bigger company. It buys in bulk. It buys nationally all its supplies and stuff. And its per unit cost is lower than mom and pop pizza stores. So what Domino's could do is charge $4.99 and put all these pizza companies out of business. Whenever they come in, these mom and pop small stores, they need to charge $5 just to break even. So they can't compete with a large company like Domino's. This is what Starbucks did. They came in and destroyed all the little mom and pop coffee stores. Okay. So in this pizza market, we naturally lead to a situation, that's why it's called a natural monopoly, where one large company dominates the market. Okay, this is a natural monopoly. All right, let's move on. Unlike a perfectly competitive situation, for a monopoly, they're a price maker. They're the sole producer, and they're a single firm that faces the market demand curve. Okay? What that means is that unlike perfect competition, where you could sell as many t-shirts as you want at a specific price, here, since you are the sole producer in a marketplace, you face the downward sloping market demand curve. Okay. And when a monopolist faces this a downward sloping market demand curve, if you're at point A and that's the price and this is the quantity, if you want to increase the price, you know that the amount you could sell will fall. Also, if you want to increase quantity, you must reduce the price. Okay, because a monopolist faces a downward sloping demand curve, here price is some function of quantity, and quantity is some function of price. Okay, they are interrelated. So what we are going to do is, because we have P on the y-axis, we're going to look at it from this perspective. Price is some function of quantity. So monopolist revenue, okay, here's total revenue, price times quantity. For a monopolist, it's price, which is a function of quantity, times quantity. And this here, we're going to use the demand curve. Okay. Remember, demand, price is some function of quantity, this demand curve. That's what we are going to use here for the price. Okay. Average revenue is equal to total revenue divided by quantity, which is just the demand curve. Okay. And the marginal revenue is going to be the following, and I'm going to prove this. You don't have to know the proof. Marginal revenue is you will find is the following. Okay. It has 2 times the slope of the demand curve. Okay. It's negative because it's downward sloping. And it has the same y-intercept as the slope curve. Okay. Assuming we have a linear demand curve. Okay. For linear demand, the marginal revenue will have, this is the slope of demand. So it'll have 2 times the slope of the demand curve, and it's negative because these are downward sloping. And it has the same y-intercept of demand. Okay. So what it will look like is the following. Quantity, here's the price, here's the demand curve. The marginal revenue curve will have the same y-intercept, but it'll have double the steepness as demand. I'm going to prove this. We're going to have to use calculus to prove this. You do not need to know the proof, but for the 3 people who care, I'm going to prove it to you. Clear it? All right. So let's say demand is P is equal to minus MQ plus B. This is demand. Then total revenue is equal to P times Q, which is equal to, remember I said for P, we gotta use the demand curve. So it's minus MQ plus B times Q. Okay. This is equal to minus MQ squared plus B times Q. That's equal to total revenue. And then we take the partial derivative, total derivative, I guess, because it's just, okay. With respect to Q, this is minus 2MQ plus B. This is equal to change in total revenue divided by change in quantity. Well, this is almost equal to that. And this is equal to marginal revenue. Marginal revenue, remember, is change in total revenue divided by change in quantity. That is almost equal to the derivative of total revenue with respect to quantity. It's equal to that when there's quantity changes by an infinitesimal amount. And this is the derivative. And you could see, here's demand. Here's demand as slope of negative M. Marginal revenue has a slope of 2 times M, or negative 2 times M, and it has the same y-intercept. All right. Okay, let's move on. All right, for profit maximization, this is the same as in any other situation we have in terms of a firm, how they profit maximize. You always set marginal revenue equals to marginal cost. And so let's show you a typical monopolist that's maximizing profit. Okay. They have quantity of pizza. This is a pizza monopoly. And here's price of pizza. Here's the demand curve. Here's the marginal revenue curve. Okay. Here's the marginal cost curve. And here's the average total cost curve. Okay. Marginal cost and average total cost is the quote unquote supply side, right? That is determined by the production function of basically how this company determined it want to produce. It basically has its own special recipe. It basically hired specific number of workers through it has a specific location. Given all of these unique reasons on how they want to produce, we have an average total cost curve and a marginal cost curve. Demand and marginal revenue curves, that's from the demand side, okay, the consumer side. That's one way of looking at this. Here, where marginal revenue hits marginal cost, right here, you draw a 90-degree line downwards. This is how much a monopolist will produce, where marginal revenue hits marginal cost. Well, that's how much they're producing. And to figure out what price they charge, you go up to the demand curve, draw a 90-degree angle to the left, and this is the price that the monopolist will charge. Given a monopolist produces, I don't know, 100 slices of pizza, consumers are willing to pay up to the demand curve. The demand curve shows willingness to pay. We learned this in chapter 7 about supply, consumer surplus and producer surplus. Demand gives us what the willingness to pay is. Well, they are willing to pay, say, $7 for a slice of pizza. Okay, and this company's making 100 slices of pizza. So total revenue is equal to price times quantity. Here it's PM times QM, which is 7 times 100, which is 700. That's the total revenue for a monopolist. What about total cost for a monopolist? Well, the total cost for a monopolist, this is equal to average total cost for a monopolist times quantity at QM, at 100 units. Average total cost is right here. Okay. Average total cost for a monopolist times quantity that the monopolist produce. Well, this average total cost is less than 7. I don't know. Let's keep it simple and stupid and call that 5. So 5 times 100 is equal to 500. So profit for a monopolist is equal to total revenue for a monopolist minus total cost for a monopolist. This is equal to 700 minus 500, which is equal to 200. So for total revenue, for a monopolist, okay, remember it's price times quantity. And visually, that is price is this vertical distance. Quantity is this horizontal distance right here. Okay. Oh, wow, this is neat. Let me draw something else. Okay. So let me try this pen. Is this times this. So the area of this green box, that's total revenue. For total cost, well, average total cost is this vertical distance. Quantity is this horizontal distance. So this red box is total cost. Profit is the difference between the green box and the red box, which is this orange shaded region. This is profit that the monopolist makes. Okay. Okay. So from here, I showed you visually how to solve a monopolist problem, okay, with a graph. Now what we're going to do is we're going to solve this algebraically. And for me to solve this algebraically, I have to give you some equations. So let me dig that up and put that on the board. Clear this. Okay, give me a second to dig this up. Oops. Okay. I think I found it. There it is. All right. So I'm going to have to give you the following for you to solve this. Okay. I'm going to have to give you a demand curve or demand equation. Its price is equal to 120 minus 3Q. I have to give you marginal revenue because I can't have you take derivatives. Marginal revenue equals 120 minus 6Q. And then I have to give you average total cost or total cost. And this is equal to ATC is equal to 100 divided by Q plus 4 plus 2Q. And then I have to give you marginal cost. And this is marginal cost is equal to 4 plus 4Q. So I have to give you demand, marginal revenue, average total cost, and marginal cost for me to ask you to solve for monopolist profit. All right. Of course, these numbers could change. So let's do this. Let's do this example together. All right. The first thing is set marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost to find Q. Marginal revenue is 120 minus 6Q. Marginal cost is 4 plus 4Q. So Q is, let's see, minus 4, 116 plus 6Q plus 6Q is equal to 10Q. So Q that the monopolist produced is 116 divided by 10, which is equal to 11.6. Okay. All right. So we know that's the quantity that the monopolist produced. Now let's figure out the price. We're going to have to plug quantity that the monopolist produced, which you found, into demand. Well, demand is P is equal to 120 minus 3Q. So P is equal to 120 minus 3 times 11.6. Okay, I'm going to put that all the way out here. So price that the monopolist charge is equal to, let's see, let me get out a calculator. Okay. It is 3 times 11.6. Okay, so it's, let me see, 120 minus 34.8. So minus 120. We get the price that the monopolist charge is equal to 85.2. Okay. All right. So from here, we could solve for total revenue and total cost. Remember, profit for a monopolist is equal to total revenue for a monopolist minus total cost for a monopolist. Total revenue for a monopolist, that is equal to price that the monopolist charge times quantity that they produce. This is 85.2 times 11.6. This is equal to I got I got 988.32. Okay. And then total cost for a monopolist, that is average total cost for a monopolist times quantity that the monopolist produced. Average total cost is up here, which is 100 divided by Q plus 4 plus 2Q. And this whole thing is multiplied by the quantity that the monopolist produced. And these are also quantity that the monopolist produced. This is 100 divided by 11.6 plus 4 plus 2 times 11.6, all times 11.6. So let's do this. Okay, 100 divided by 11.6. That is, right here is 8.621 plus 4 plus 2 times 11.6. And that is 23.2. And the whole thing is multiplied by 11.6. So let's see, 23.2 plus 4 plus 8.621, 35. So I got here 35.821 times 11.6 times 11.6. So I have this is equal to 415.5236. So this is our total cost. Total cost is 415.5236. So then the profit for a monopolist, that is equal to 988.32 minus 415.5236. So the profit for a monopolist is equal to 572.7964. You could round up to 2 decimal. Just think like this. This is basically how you solve for a monopolist profit, given I give you these 4 equations. Okay, so I'm going to have to give you these 4 equations. And if I give you that, you could solve for monopolist profit. Okay, let's move on. The next thing we're going to talk about is how a monopolist decision affects economic well-being or the examination of the welfare cost of having a monopoly. Okay. How the monopolist decisions affect economic well-being or examination of the welfare cost of a monopoly. All right, let's go through this. Okay. I'm going to draw a monopolist problem. Here's quantity of pizza, price of pizza, it's a demand curve for pizza, it's a marginal revenue curve for pizza, marginal cost curve, and the average total cost could be anywhere. It could be down here, it could be up here. I'm going to keep it simple and stupid and make it go through right here where everything else crosses. Average total cost. All right. Just to make it cleaner picture. Here, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, this is the quantity that the monopolists produce. Where this quantity they produce hits the demand curve, this is the price that they charge. And at this quantity, wherever it hits the average total cost curve, right here, this is the average total cost for a monopolist. Okay. So we know for a monopolist, okay, this is the price, this is the cost, this is the economic profit. Okay. If you had a benevolent planner come in and said, looked at this situation. Remember what a benevolent planner is. A benevolent planner is one that tries to maximize total surplus. And basically, they know to maximize total surplus, they need to set up the situation and compare it to one that's competitive, perfect competition. So they're going to look at this situation and they're going to say, okay, what would happen in perfect competition? In perfect competition, the marginal cost curve would be the supply curve. So that's supply, and this is demand. Right here, this is the equilibrium. This is the price that a benevolent planner says should be charged or would be charged in perfect competition. And this is the output that a benevolent planner would sell, or what would happen in a competitive environment. If we have perfect competition, this is the price and this is a quantity. And you could see that the price with competition, with perfect competition, is less than the price that the monopolists charge. And the quantity in a competitive situation is greater than the quantity that the monopolists produce. Specifically, a monopolist charges more and produces less for society. All right, now let's look at and compare the welfare cost. Okay, in order for me to do this, I'm going to create a consumer surplus, producer surplus, total surplus, and then we're going to have monopoly. And we're going to have perfect competition. And we're going to have change. If we change from monopoly to perfect competition, what would happen to, say, consumer surplus, producer surplus, and total surplus? So for me right now, I'm going to mark each area with a letter. Say A would be area of this triangle. B is the area of that triangle. C, D, E, F, G, H. That's all I need. All right. Consumer surplus for a monopolist situation. Well, by definition, consumer surplus is the area that's below the demand curve and above the price that they are paying. So in a monopoly situation, this is the price that they pay. This is the demand curve. So consumer surplus is A plus B. Producer surplus is the area between price that the monopolists charge and marginal cost curve. Okay. Well, here I should have labeled this. We're gonna do it like this: F, G, H, I. Okay. Then the producer surplus is C plus D plus F plus G plus I. Okay. Area below the price that the monopolists charge, above the marginal cost curve or the supply curve. Total surplus is A, B, C, D, F, G, I, or it's the sum of above. A plus B plus C plus D plus F plus G plus I. Okay, now let's look at perfect competition. When a benevolent planner steps in and they treat this as a perfectly competitive environment, consumer surplus is the area above the price they are charged, above P star, but below the demand. So it's A plus B plus C plus D plus E. Producer surplus is the area below the price that they receive, above the marginal cost curve or the supply curve. F plus G plus H plus I. Total surplus is you add above A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F plus G plus H plus I. Now let's see what happened to consumer surplus when we converted a monopoly into a competitive environment. Consumers gained C plus D plus E. Producers, they lost C loss D, FGI, FGI, and they, let's see, you lost C, you lost D, but you gained H. Okay. What about total surplus? Well, you add above C minus D, they cancel. D minus D, they cancel. We gain E and we gain H. Specifically, given that we have a monopoly and not a perfectly competitive sitting, this is what we lose out on, E and H. Okay. So if we convert a monopolist to a perfectly competitive environment, the economy gains E and H. E and H is the dead weight loss. Dead weight loss of having a monopoly rather than a competitive environment. That is the loss associated with this contraction of transactions. Remember, if we have a monopoly, this is how much is being sold. If we have a competitive output environment, Q star is how much we are being sold. Because we have a monopoly, less is being bought and sold. And the value of this amount that is not being bought and sold, the value of that is E plus H, the deadweight loss of having a monopoly. All right, let's move on. Now what we're going to do is talk about price discrimination. Okay, so let me put up stuff regarding price discrimination, and then we're going to study it. Yeah, why monopolists try to charge different prices to different customers? Market power and price discrimination. What is price discrimination? Price discrimination is the business practice of selling the same good at different prices to different customers. Okay, it's a rational strategy to increase profits by extracting consumer surplus or different willingness to pay. What do I mean by that? Price discrimination that happens in real life. Movie theater tickets. Young kids, they pay less prices than adults, and super old people, they pay less in terms of a movie ticket price than adults. If you're like normal age, you pay a lot higher than if you're super young or you're super old. And that doesn't make sense in terms of the cost, because for the movie theater, it costs the same amount of money to show the movie to a little kid versus an adult, a super old person versus a 20, 30-year-old. Actually, it probably costs more to show the movie to little kids because they'll make a mess and you got to hire people to clean up. Okay. But they price discriminate. That's price discrimination. Another example of price discrimination is airline tickets. If you buy an airline ticket a month in advance, 2 months in advance, you pay cheaper than if you buy an airline ticket a week in advance or a day in advance. Because the airline knows that you need to be there. If you're buying an airline ticket 1 day in advance, they charge you more. They're going to charge you for that. Okay? They're going to charge you your willingness to pay. Okay. Price discrimination requires the ability to separate customers according to their willingness to pay. So what movie theaters do is they sort people by age. What airlines do is sort people by the time in advance you buy the airline ticket. Okay. What's kind of interesting about price discrimination is it actually raises the economic welfare of society. But what it does is shift all of the surplus to the producer. The consumer loses all its surpluses or can lose all its surplus. In a situation where we have perfect price discrimination, what is that? Producers know the willingness to pay for all the customers. They look at a customer or potential customer and they know exactly what they're willing to pay for that product is, and they charge them for it. And they charge each customer a different price or exactly his or her willingness to pay. The monopolist will get the entire surplus of profits, and there will be no deadweight loss. There actually will be no deadweight loss. Let's study this visually with a graph. Okay, there's quantity of pizza, price of pizza, demand, marginal revenue, marginal cost. We'll put the average total cost right there. We know in a classic setting, right here, this is the quantity that the monopolist would produce. And this is the single price that the monopolist will charge. And we know in this setting, the deadweight loss will be this triangle right here. Okay. Why? Because in perfect competition or a competitive situation, right here is point A. This is the price that they would charge, competitive firms would charge, and this is the output that they would produce. Okay. So what would happen if we had a perfect price discriminator? Let's see. With perfect price discrimination, okay, let me draw this like that. With perfect price discrimination, for the first unit right here, Q1, okay, the monopolist will charge this price right here, P1. For the second unit, the monopolist will charge P2. Okay, for the second unit. And the monopolist will get the total surplus from the demand curve all the way down to the marginal cost or the supply curve. Third unit, they will get this. Fourth unit, they would get this. Fifth unit, keep going down. So they're getting all of this surplus. And they wouldn't stop at PM and QM. Why? Because you're still getting surpluses if you continue. They will continue until we're at P star and Q star. And they will take this whole area as producer surplus. Okay? The total surplus in competitive setting will equal the producer surplus in perfect price discrimination setting. Okay. And the thing is a benevolent social planner is okay with this situation. They'll be fine with this situation. Remember, a benevolent social planner goal is to maximize total surplus. He doesn't care or she doesn't care who gets it. All they care about is maximizing total surplus. And because the total surplus is indeed maximized, because it equals the total surplus in a competitive setting, benevolent planner looks at this and They'll say fine, and they'll walk away. And if someone complains and say, well, that's not fair, the consumer complains and say, that's not fair. Producer's getting everything. The benevolent planner will say to the consumer, then buy shares in this monopoly. Get a piece of its action. Buy shares in this company. All right, let's move on. This is the end of the lecture on monopoly. We are done. After this, the last couple of pages are regarding public policies towards monopoly. And all I really want to say to you about that is this, what I learned from my friend who worked at the Justice Department and did antitrust stuff about monopolies. The federal government will turn a blind eye to a monopoly as long as you're not exerting too much monopoly power. If you're stifling competition, then they will come in and try to break you up and regulate you. But as long as you do not stifle, quote unquote, too much competition, they'll leave you alone to make monopoly profit. Now, what is too much competition? That just depends on whatever president and his or her commissioner of the Justice Department is in power. At one point, when Clinton was in power, was the president, they wanted to break up Microsoft. They were suing Microsoft and they wanted to break them up. But when George Bush came in and replaced Clinton, the court proceedings and that lawsuit to break up Microsoft disappeared. So it's all whatever, depending on who's in power. Okay, we'll end it here. Bye bye.